And much the same as Until Tuesday. Now, you may recognize Tuesday because he stars in a lot more books, not just this one. There's another one for adults. Tuesday's story has also been made into a juvenile or children's nonfiction book. I think it's been made into some children's picture books. So this author has written about Tuesday across many different age groups. And Tuesday's owner served in Iraq and was a wounded warrior, and Tuesday was the dog that really saved him and gave him new purpose and new life and really supported him. So it's an incredibly heartwarming story, just like Craig and Fred was. Just about the power of love, the power of pets, the power of dogs, and just how they can make such a difference. So, like I said, if you're really into that kind of story, both of these are true stories. Fred is out there, and Tuesday is out there, and you can find out why his name is Tuesday. And if you're interested in reading this book and you have kids or grandkids, you can also share the children's books about Tuesday as well. I want to say the children's book is called Tuesday Tucks Me In. So I like it when they write at different levels. And I meant to mention earlier that Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand, which I talked about with Louis Zamperini, was written also as a young reader's edition. So for example, if you're reading Unbroken, your middle school or high school child or grandchild could be reading the young reader's edition of Unbroken, and then you can talk about the story. And in this case, it's a little bit easier to understand, well, it's a children's book, so it's going to be a much more condensed story, a lot more pictures. But you may be saying, well, what exactly is a young reader's edition? It's taken the story, it's abridged it somewhat, and maybe in certain places, depending on how intense the story is, adapted it in such a way that is not overwhelming for a child or for a teenager. Another great young reader's edition hand-in-hand book would be Hidden Figures, and then the Young Readers Edition is over in our children's department. So again, if you love pets, you love dogs, you're looking for something heartwarming, both of these will do the trick. Now, I expected dogs to be an animal that would help veterans out. I did not expect birds, big birds, parrots, in fact. And this is Birds of a Feather, a true story of hope and healing and the power of animals. So it starts off with a woman who decides that she wants a bird as a pet, and she gets this ginormous, I can't think of a better word, huge parrot, and decides the parrot needs a friend. So then she has these two parrots, these two wonderful pets that are parrots, and becomes a clinical psychologist and finds out that through, after all the homeless veterans that she's met over the years, she decides that as a clinical psychologist, that's what she wants to focus in on. She wants to focus in on veterans. And here's where her two loves come into play, helping veterans and birds, because she found that there were several veterans who really struggled to talk about their experiences. As I've mentioned before, an incredibly different thing to do, because to an extent, talking about your experiences, you almost have to relive those experiences. But they had a much easier time talking to the parrots, talking to the birds. Much like if you've ever seen a reluctant reader read to Rover, you'll have where they read to dogs or they read to cats, and the reason that the struggling reader can read to these animals is because there's no feeling of judgment or inadequacy. They can just let down their guard and practice reading. Much the same way with these parrots, that they could just open up to them in a way that maybe would have been much harder to do as a human, where you feel like even if another person is trying their best not to be judgmental or horrified or taken aback. You know, we all have natural reactions to things. But these animals don't have that same experience. So then that's when she came up with Serenity Park. And it was designed to be basically a place where veterans could come and interact with these birds, and through a sort of therapy. So it was a really interesting story because, again, sometimes when you hear veterans and support animals, you think dogs. And of course, dogs play a big role. But here's an example of birds. So clearly, animals are really a big way that veterans can start to work through that, I need a better word than just angst, but just that whole traumatic experience. And, you know, much as elderly citizens benefit from pets, having someone you have to be responsible for, that you have to care for, kind of like the child that never grows up, it's much the same with veterans. So again, definitely worth a read because it was so unexpected with birds, dogs and birds. Now, our next few books, speaking of the unexpected, do you find that when you learn about World War I or World War II in school, or if you learned about them more in college, they don't seem to mention women all that much? And at first I thought that was pretty normal because I thought, well, you know, women didn't start really coming into their own until the 60s, until they finally started really pushing back against the establishment and demanding rights and demanding fair treatment and things like that. However, women actually had a role in both World War I and World War II, and that's what you find out here in the Hello Girls, America's First Women Soldiers. So I had no idea that women fought in World War I, that a few hundred of them were sent to fight in World War I. And unfortunately, as you can well imagine, it wasn't enough just to put on the uniform and go and fight. That should have been enough. That should have been plenty. But of course, you know, they were ridiculed and disrespected and scoffed at by the male soldiers over there because I think women can't fight in battle, but they did. And they were very successful. And they showed just as much bravery and courage and heart and determination as their male counterparts. So when they came home from World War I, did they receive the pensions that they deserved? No. Did they receive any of the medals that men, having done the very same things that they did and got rewarded and recognized for those things, did they receive that same sort of compensation and treatment? No. So they fought for it right back here, that they should be considered equal to their male counterparts in war as they fought right alongside them. And so these women really helped blaze the trail in a completely unexpected arena. And so I thought that was incredible to read. I thought it was just amazing. And what they did is the Hello Girls then opened the door, this is in World War I, they then opened the door for the women with silver rings in World War II. And it's just incredible. One of the women was giving a flying lesson only to then find herself in the middle of a war zone. So she barely gets the plane down. And a little while later, there's a call for women to come fight in the war. And she signs up as a pilot, you know, without hesitation, earns her silver wings. And again, like the Hello Girls is right there in the thick of everything while the war is raging on until, of course, the war started to turn a corner. And then the powers that be decided they didn't need the women fighting in the war anymore, so they sent them home, whether that was the choice they wanted to make or not. So again, that same example of having to fight for fair treatment and respect and acknowledgement comes through in this story, as well as with the women with the silver wings. So if you want to feel, you know, emboldened and be reminded that nowadays you have men and women both who sign up for the service, and it's you don't really bat an eyelash at it as much anymore because women being in service isn't so unexpected, but that's because of the Hello Girls and the Women with the Silver Wings blazing the trail and showing that women could do more than just these slotted gender stereotyped roles. So both incredible stories. I feel like so many of these books are gonna eventually be opted for movies. So now's the time to go and read these books before they become movies, so then you can see if the movie did the book justice. Now, speaking of people that defied societal norms and didn't take things lying down and didn't listen to what other people had to say, but instead plunged right through, you've got Wheels of Courage. These are World War II veterans that invented wheelchair sports and fought for disability rights and inspired a nation. And what happened is these men went off to war, and many of them came home as paraplegics. And they came home handicapped in a variety of ways. And unfortunately, at that time, the doctors just considered them, that was just the end of the road. That there really wasn't any, even though they were still alive, there really wasn't any life for them, quality of life for them to lead. And these soldiers said, no, I'm not gonna waste away in a hospital bed. I'm not just gonna go out with a whimper or decide that my life's over. So instead they got together and they found ways to, for example, with basketball here, play in wheelchairs and fight for disability rights. And more importantly, change people's minds about seeing a person who has been hurt or damaged in war as still a whole person, despite what their body may show. And so that was incredibly courageous because once again, just like with the women, they already had some of the stacks staked against them with people making assumptions of knowing what they were capable of or what the value of their life was gonna be or what they could expect from a certain experience. Instead, they just plunged ahead and blazed the trail. So again, another really important story about people that you think to yourself, gosh, how didn't I hear more about these people in studying history? And now you get to. I've mentioned in some of my other programs about how the public library has been nicknamed the People's University, and it is. It's a place for lifelong learning. So if you never went to college or you went to college and it was many, many years ago, or simply there's just something new in the world that you want to know more about for any number of reasons, your public library is the best place to start because it is the People's University. It's volumes and volumes of books that can help you expand your mind in all sorts of different directions. So a lot of bravery, a lot of courage, a lot of I'm not going to take no for an answer or simply not do something simply because someone else says, but it's not been done before. So I thought that was really inspiring, that after being through such difficult times, that their spirit was unvarnished and they just didn't give up. And so that was the last of my books. And like I said, this is really a very small collection of what we own about veterans and what we own about war. But I hope you found some titles in there today that inspire you. Like I said, I'm very inspired by my late grandfather, all that he did in World War II. He was injured in World War II, which is why he received a Purple Heart. He saved a man's life in combat, leading to the Bronze Star. He was sent home twice with extreme injuries. And the first time he went home and they patched him up, he went right back into war. The second time he came home, instead of patching him up and sending him back, they said, if you go back a third time, you're coming home in a body bag. So to not only have seen what the war truly entailed, because when you go back that second time, you're not under any illusions of what you're walking into, but to go not just once, but twice, because he felt so impassioned about what they were fighting for and why they needed to fight for it and why they needed to battle these incredible injustices that were occurring in another country, but still no less important, was, like I said, is really inspiring to me. And I hope that those of you who've watched today, like I said, if you know a veteran or love a veteran, tell them thank you, offer to help them, give them the support, any support that you can, even if it's just, a smile and a wave. And remember that some of the veterans that we appreciate are no longer with us, but we can always keep them in our hearts, and in that way, it keeps them alive. So I hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and certainly enjoyed sharing with you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.